We'll get started here as people take their seats. Just, trying to channel a little Raleigh Williams energy. Isn't that guy great? Raleigh's so much fun. Definitely not as funny as him, but anyway, I'm Cameron Millard. Thanks for joining our session. Evaluating thermal energy networks within your community. So it's going to be an interactive, fun session with my co-presenters here, Ashley and Carrie from McKinstry.
Hi everybody, my name is Carrie Thomas and I'm the Director of Energy Asset Development for McKinstry, and I'm going to be sharing not only our process but some of the projects that we've worked on in the past and how we can facilitate projects in your communities.
And hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. I know it's after lunch on the second day, so we're thankful you're all here. I'm a senior account manager at McKinstry, working on a lot of our thermal energy network projects in Colorado, and I've been working with all of our local government clients for the past 10 years and been in the industry for about 12. I'll be leading the interactive session today, so forcing you to talk to your neighbors, come up with some cool ideas, and then do a little bit of presenting.
Thanks, and again, I'm Cameron Millard. I'm with the Town of Vail. I've been there about 4 years. It's actually my 4-year work anniversary. Pretty excited about that. So hanging in there, hanging tough in local government, doing what we do. But I've been working in energy efficiency for about 15 years. As a home energy auditor, I've worked in nonprofit and have my own business for a little while. But this is the most exciting thing I've worked on, and really paradigm shifting when we start talking about thermal energy networks. So I'm going to give you a little roadmap of where we're going today. We're going to be talking about thermal energy networks and really the change that has to go along with those, because they are different enough way of using energy and sharing energy. We actually have to sort of rethink our organizations, our partnerships and collaborations. So Carrie she's an expert in the strategic change necessary to make these things happen. And what are the drivers for thermal energy networks? What's the why? And I'm going to share with you the why from Vail and some of the partnerships. And I see some of the folks I've had the pleasure of working with in the room today from Vail Resorts. Good to see you, Jake, and some others. So, networks and partnerships, that's what it's all about. We're going to talk about the success factors driving thermal energy network success at a community level, and that development process that's really necessary. The technology, it's not new technology necessarily, but we're applying it sometimes in novel ways, and we have to figure out together, how to make it successful. Ashley's going to take us through a fun exercise so you guys can talk amongst yourselves and really get to the heart of why a thermal energy network might be right for your community. And then we'll kind of finish it off by talking a little bit more about what's going on at Vail. Sound like a plan? Yeah. All right.
Thanks, everybody. I've been with McKinstry for 4 years, and my background is I have 16 years in the energy field, and for the last 8 years I've helped utilities set up their behind-the-meter programs, and before that, for 10 years, I was an independent real estate developer. So we're going to see a lot about how McKinstry hired me to help them put this process together, to have a replicatable process that works for our customers. Our ownership is really devoted to sustainability. They've done a lot of pilot programs around thermal energy networks I'm going to talk about today, and they've kind of figured out what's the best process and how to get these done, so I'm going to talk a lot about that today. So I wanted to start with a baselining. So how is energy produced and delivered today, which everyone's pretty much aware of, but how does it change when we start talking about thermal energy networks? So for over 100 years, we've had energy produced in a central location. It's sent over long distances where there's a lot of waste, and then it's used by a passive building, a building that just really takes the energy and uses it. It really doesn't participate in the energy ecosystem at all. The best part about thermal energy networks is that we bring the generation closer to the end user, right? It's in the community. We generate energy one time, and then it's used multiple times, which means that the building becomes an integral part of the process. So as we start to talk about some of the key factors, we have to consider the changes that happen at the building level and how that integrates into into this energy system as a whole. So we call it the take it, make it model, and we're really moving into kind of this new paradigm. And it doesn't just involve systemic change from a technology perspective, because this network allows you to have an energy network that functions as part of your real estate portfolio, because it starts to give you the ability to generate revenue to serve your the needy parts of your community. So if you really think about what kind of changes from a contracts, governance, finance, ownership, and operations model, they can be very creative and very different and serve the community as a whole. So we can do things like dynamic pricing, so we can attract new business or serve our underserved community. We can do economic development, so we can reach out to developers, and their first cost and their leasable space and their overall energy cost over time is more even. So that's a value to them, and it's a way to attract those new developers and new businesses. You can also do economic development by attracting new businesses such as a data center who can start to sell their waste heat. And I'm going to talk about a project we did in downtown Seattle. They can sell their waste heat and have a revenue stream. So again, it's a reason for them to come to your community. So it really is a community asset that can start to serve your communities. It's no longer just a capital expense with an operating expense. So it's really valuable as a real estate asset. So I wanted to start with the end in mind. What we do is deliver a business plan for how to do this. So it defines what your technical roadmap is, it defines what your ownership models are, it defines what your financial frameworks are, it defines the governance, who's going to govern these, is it going to be one entity, is it going to be a coalition, what's the best thing for your community, what the implementation roadmap looks like, and then what policy help we need from other stakeholders such as government and utilities, because they are integrally involved. In fact, one of our projects that we did as a test case, we did a financial partnership with a Vista utility. So it wasn't just us as the developer, we partnered with a utility and a university to build that greenfield development with a thermal energy network. So I'll give you some more details on that in a second. So we'll return to this at the end, but I kind of wanted to give you a glimpse of what we're going to produce for Vail. So what are some of the drivers? Obviously, communities, especially communities that are interested in these types of things, have climate goals or decarbonization goals. That's been a primary driver, whether it's sticks or carrot, it doesn't matter. It just helps to have some kind of metrics and ways to measure ourselves. Efficiency and resiliency, think about this for a second. That generation is in your community. It's a lot more resilient. There is no dependence on a commodity-based fuel, so that you don't have any of the geopolitical or any other out of your control issues. It can be, if governed correctly, 100% in your control. There's economic value, which I've talked about, which is really attracting new businesses, new labor force to your community. Resource utilization, so the building, right, it becomes part of that economic ecosystem and becomes valuable, so our resources are better used. Energy is better used. There's one input and it's used multiple times, so that's a real benefit in our resource utilization. Community and equity, this can really be, if governed correctly, really beneficial to your community as far as helping the underserved in our community. And we also, I want to talk about fragmented stakeholders. The one caveat, 80% of the success of these types of projects is managing the stakeholders. And these diverse stakeholders that have different goals, different aspirations, and how do we bring them together and make sure this works for all of them. And then modernization of the infrastructure. We see a lot of deferred maintenance, and we can address a lot of those issues through these types of developments. So the challenges require approach to infrastructure development, one that integrates your systems, aligns your stakeholders, and delivers sustainable and financiable solutions. So those are the drivers for the networks. As I mentioned, many of these networks, especially the ones that are done at scale, they are done under partnerships. So if you ever have the opportunity to kind of look at the Vancouver, there's 5 nodes in Vancouver and how they're done. They're all done by West Bank, the developer. However, they're all owned and operated differently. And the reason is because the risk was different for each of them, right? So we have to manage that risk differently. The capital access for each of those was different and a different partner and partnership. It does allow us to be a speedy and innovative solution. So what we saw as a developer is there was a lot of work going on, but not a lot of work happening. So a lot of analysis paralysis. So we wanted to put together a program that gets you there faster at scale, gives you more financial options that can get these done in a meaningful time frame. I mean, there's some great things that have happened, like Montana State's one for us that's now we're on the 4th node, but it took 15 years. That doesn't help us when we're trying to get to these metrics quickly. Scalability and then policy alignment. Again, this is where some of our stakeholders from government and the utility come into play. Even if they're not going to participate financially, they may be able to help us with some policies. So I want to talk about, the community level, the scale, right? It's not just a project, it's a development. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about Seattle, the city of Seattle, and what they're doing, because we're working on all of those projects. The thermal energy network can touch all parts of your community. So in Seattle, their central downtown is called First Hill. And we did the first node on First Hill with Amazon. So we are a investor partner in that project. So Amazon built a data center in downtown Seattle, and we helped them design and implement a thermal energy network to sell their waste heat as a revenue opportunity to their neighbor buildings. They're getting ready to do that second circle of that development now. The next node we're doing in downtown Seattle is a hospital. It's the largest level 1 trauma center in the Northwest, Harborview Medical Center, and we will hopefully be a equity partner in that as well. That'll be the second node on First Hill, and then there's 4 other anchor tenants. They will do a kind of a coalition, because that's another thing that when we start talking about ownership and abilities for communities to interconnect these assets, you have to have a common place where they can agree on at least the technology that they can attach in the future. Sometimes those will develop into consortiums, which I'll talk a little bit about in a while. But consortiums are where those key stakeholders come together and actually share ownership. There's official documents. They all put in money, and they do this as basically a privatized utility with the consortium members. So you can put in solar, you can put in batteries, we can do microgrids, we can involve every part of the community, and it is a community asset that can really benefit everyone involved. To the right is really all of the stakeholders that are involved. We have the government and the utilities. There are the anchor institutions I just talked about. We have private sectors like McKinstry. You have community and civic stakeholders like Cameron and the Town of Vail. And then we have technology and delivery partners like Gray Edge Group. And for us, for our sewer heat recovery, we've done 2 of those. We use Shark. So there's just a broad swath of stakeholders that have to be managed when we do a complete, at-scale thermal energy network, which is really where we get the benefit. So when we talk about boiling these success factors down into 3 buckets, obviously the energy infrastructure and the technology is the baseline. It's hard to do. If we didn't have a sewer system, you can't do sewer heat recovery. So we have to have the right technology to match what's available in that community. And then the next thing is, this is where a lot of these fail, is the in-building retrofits. So the in-building retrofits, I think the Town of Vail did an exceptional job in doing those first, right? So the buildings are ready and available to accept the thermal energy and be a part of the thermal energy network. And then the thing that ties them together is the ownership, operations, finance, and most importantly, governance. Again, that is 80% of this success, is managing the governance and stakeholders to get these across the finish line. This is our process. We modeled our process after a real estate development process because it's very similar in its requirements. Vertical developers, real estate developers, they really do have to manage a lot of stakeholders. They have to manage a lot of processes. There's policies involved. So we took that model and replicated it for our projects. So McKinstry did a greenfield development in Spokane. It was our test case that our leadership invested in. We did it in partnership with Avista. Avista was able to not build a substation because we did the thermal energy network. That was their driver. And so that building, it's 2 buildings right now, but we have a thermal battery there, we have solar there, we have a microgrid there. We developed in partnership with Avista software called EDO, where they can just-in-time manage our energy system at that development, and that's now being marketed to other utilities. In fact, Holy Cross just signed up for that. But it really did take a partnership and for us to meet everybody's value propositions for that project to happen. But we did follow this process. It's replicatable. It gives us the ability to go to each customer and map out their governance, their operations, their ownership models, and make sure we have the right one for each customer. So again, we end with the business plan. And so how do we get to the business plan? We have a database of ownership, operations, finance, and governance models that's over 100 entries. So we have a broad swath of different kinds of models that we can use and have used. But I just boiled it down to 4 each in each subcategory so you could kind of get a feel for the variability. So from an ownership model, the utility can own these, right? Especially in Colorado. You do have private concessionaires that will actually buy your entire energy system and include the thermal energy networks. Where we see the most is, of course, in the hybrid P3 as a service models or other creative, what we did P3 with Avista. And then nonprofit and special districts are very helpful, especially where we have kind of a hard time getting the financials to work. If we do it under a nonprofit, which is probably what's going to happen at Harborview Medical Center, those sometimes service very well. From an operations perspective, the utilities can operate them, private operators, joint operations, so I'm just going to make some stuff up, but maybe it's the Town of Vail and the Vail Resorts that operate it, who knows. Or it can be led just by this key stakeholder. Finance, there's just so many options in finance. The usual slide I do for finance has 45 different entries, but we can do public financing, which is typically how energy projects are done. We can do private capital, which we've done a lot of. We can do blended P3s, so you may bring some funds, we may bring some funds. And then in Colorado, the developer can do the metro districts. Metro districts are typically done by government entities in other states, but here, a private developer like myself can do a metro district. From a governance perspective, it can be a utility similar to what they do now. We can have a private special purpose entity board, multiple stakeholder coalitions, and then a special district board. So there's so much variability in this process that can really be customized for each entity and community, and we can really put together the right thing for each of our stakeholders. So we're going to move into the activity, and we wanted to share with you, we really feel, as I've said now several times, stakeholder management is the key. It's 80% of the success of this. So that's where we start. We start with a summit of all the key stakeholders, and at the end of that summit, we scorecard. We have a very defined process on how we score this for the community that says, yes, we're going to do this, maybe, or no, we're not. And by the way, I've sat through 2 of these summits where we left saying, no, we're not. That does happen. But this is the actual scorecard from the summit that we did with the Town of Vail and all of their stakeholders, many of whom are in the room today. And we left all feeling, they had some incredible dialogue on this scorecard as a group and started already sharing ideas and thoughts around how they could do this. So we did score well at the end of that. And then Ashley's going to take us through a little bit of a tiny interactive session here to kind of emulate what this is. But I want to thank you and hope this was helpful.
Thanks, Carrie. And Ashley, just real quick, if you are from government, can you raise your hand? Okay, private sector. Who else? Utility? Any utility folks in the room? Ish? Board member?
Yeah. Industry?
Nonprofits.
Great.
How about industry?
Yeah, industry. Consultants. Excellent. So, okay, Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, so when we kick off this business planning process, like Carrie mentioned, we typically start off with a visioning exercise. So we're going to replicate that in the room today. We're going to pretend you all are a full community, and we're going to kind of divide up the tables based on stakeholders. And the goal of this is to come up with, what is your vision or your why for wanting to do this as that type of stakeholder. And then at the end, we're going to have, if there are volunteers, and we have a lot of people in the room, but maybe we'll get 3 volunteers to tell us kind of what you came up with as your type of stakeholder of why you would want to move forward with this and some of the benefits. You can see some examples of different things that Vail came up with from a neighborhood aspect, financial, carbon and sustainability, resiliency, regulatory, and other. Those are kind of the main categories. So I think the way we're going to divide up the room, I think we'll have the first 2 tables. You're going to be the local electric utility. And so you'll come up with reasons why the utility would or would not want to pursue this and kind of your why and your vision for that. I know Jake's at the next table, so maybe we'll do local government. We won't do ski resort for the next 2. But if you're not part of a table, maybe all the people in the back can be one team. And you're going to be the local government in the community. We'll have the ski resort be these 2 tables. So each of the tables can come up with 3 bullets, and we'll take volunteers at the end to present. And then, Matt, what do you want to be?
Industry?
We'll have the industry here. So we're going to give you 5 minutes. If you have questions, Cameron, Carrie, and I will walk around. And at the end of 5 minutes, we'll take some volunteers or representatives from each table to give us what they came up with. Okay, we're at time. Everyone, wrap up, get your summary bullets. I think maybe I'll volunteer Matt to go first.
Yeah.
So from industry's perspective, give us your vision and why.
Great conversation. Thank you so much. We're going to hand it over. We got to wind it down. Let's keep talking.
Yeah.
I love that we're all talking.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's the best.
All right, so using expansive imagination skills, we came up with what would be valuable in this kind of a system from a consultant. For me, because I do fit into that world, it's awesome because I fit into this. You ever heard of EcoDistricts? The things that you can do that the world needs, things that you can get paid for, and things that you can do well. And I feel like I fit right in the middle of those. I'm doing good things from the world and buying ski boats for my family. It's just a great setup for me. One of the things that we talked about, and pertinent to the Vail process, is these opportunities where liabilities become resources. In Vail, there's the Eagle River Sanitation and Wastewater District that has their water treatment plant there at the west end of town. Now they've got their effluent stream that's treated and cleaned, and it goes right back into a blue ribbon trout stream, Gore Creek. For a small window of the year, they're over the maximum temperature that they're regulated to. It's too hot going into the stream. We don't want that for the fish's sake. And so they were going to have to install a cooling system in that. It's not cheap, it's not free, it takes up room. Or their liability can become an incredible resource for this thermal energy network. You can draw a similar line between maybe a brewery that intermittently discharges high volumes of very hot water in the municipal sewer. That can be a problem for the digestion process downstream. So take the liability and make it into an asset. We can use that heat. We can take this multi-use heat that Carrie mentioned and put it to work and offset more bore fields and offset more boiler operation hours. Do I need to come up with a third? Is that good?
No,
Okay.
that's
Good.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great job from industry. We're going to move on to the utility table.
Okay, so we are the utility. We were not sure if we were a co-op or if we were a big utility, which would change our decision making on this topic. I think the first thing we thought about is, do we want to own this? Do we want to just support this? What size is it? If it's really small, maybe we don't want to own it. If it's pretty big, maybe we do. I think we decided we'd do a PPA was probably how we'd approach this project. And so we value this project mostly because it's shaving our peak load, and that's creating a lot of value for us, whether or not we have a power purchase agreement with them. Anything else to add, guys? That's kind of where we landed. So yeah, we want a PPA from whoever's building it and take off our peak load.
Nice.
Great job. We'll move on to ski resorts next.
Ben, the real ski area person.
You know, our discussion, I'm sustainability coordinator at Steamboat Resort. My name is Ben Kavara, but the reason I mention that is I started by providing the case for the ski resort from the sustainability perspective. And, you know, the real value for us is that when we look at sustainability, we're also looking at it from a resource and cost savings perspective, and to both shave peak loads, to be able to use less resources, or to reuse resources, as I really liked you said up there, to input something once and then be able to reuse that. That is inherently the story that ski areas want to tell. And so with this project, you know, the ski resort would be very interested in pursuing this, but we do not have the expertise to run a system like this, and it would require a third-party ownership of some sort.
Awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the local government side.
Hi. We created a mythical local government that is merging some of the different issues that we see in our communities. And one is that our community has restrictions on the percentage of our electricity that can come from solar. And so because that is restricted, bringing in thermal networks can kind of increase total energy, allow us to add more solar, and we really value consumer choice. So adding another option to the mix that consumers can choose is really important to us and our values as a community. But we also have an expansion of natural gas pipeline coming in that has some ecological concerns of our residents, as well as we know that when we hit peak demand, that is when we're buying the dirtiest power. And so we have climate goals to reduce our peak demand, both, you know, for the environment, but also we know that residential units are going to be charged for their peak demand a year from now. This is true in one of our communities. All these things are true in some way, shape, or form in a community. And that's really going to affect residents who are already struggling to be able to afford to live in our communities. So if we can reduce peak demand, which is usually heating in the wintertime, or, you know, that will benefit our residents, it'll benefit our environment, and it will allow for this consumer choice without breaking the rules we are bound by.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
awesome job. Thank you to all of our volunteers. I'll go grab that mic.
Is the table or?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, one
Right.
table. Does the
Right.
table?
Oh, good.
Do you guys want to report out?
We did not come up with a fake local government, but we did come up with a number of whys. So I'll just go through our laundry list. The ability to produce and use local energy, which gives us both energy independence, but also long-term stability in energy pricing. That in turn supports our local businesses and local community members in having a more affordable space to live. Meeting long-term sustainability climate goals, building resilience to power outages, or just long-term resilience as far as having a better energy or an energy source to pull upon in power outages. Connecting into special districts, we also mentioned the wastewater treatment plant and being able to lower operational costs and maintenance costs for services that support the whole of the community. Creating jobs, which is a double-edged sword, as we don't want maybe to bring more people to the community because of affordable housing. But if we could get locals in those jobs, that would be awesome. And then the last one, improved energy services for those who are a part of it, improved economic output. And then the last comment, which I will end on, which I thought was a really good one, is it just that partnership and governance. It lays a strong foundation for future partnerships and
Yes.
collaboration in the community.
Perfect.
Kim.
Yeah, great job, everyone. That was good exercise. I hope we all found it valuable. That was a little bit of what we would do in the kickoff meeting with bringing all the stakeholders together and starting this business modeling process of the Thermal Energy Network project. To Cam.
Okay, so now we'll get to what's going on in Vail. That's what everyone always wants to know. And I will say I'm very humbled, to be in a position to get to work on these challenging problems. And the fact that it's inspired others, that's just incredibly humbling for me. So, I feel lucky and privileged to be here today. If you were at my talk last year, I'm sorry, I kind of recycled this and it needs an update, but this is the Town of Vail's greenhouse gas emissions over time. And we've had great success with our local utility, a cooperative, Holy Cross Energy. They are consistently hitting, in the 80s on renewable energy. And then the Town of Vail participates in the PURE program. And so that's that little blue line where in 2020 we joined the PURE program. That ensures we get 100% renewable energy. Basically, we've taken care of electricity. It's always good to do efficiency from a cost perspective. But that red line, that's the natural gas. That's the emissions from natural gas. It keeps going up. Why does it keep going up? We keep building things with snow melt. Snow melting just seems to be a necessity in today's modern ski base area. The town is very worried about litigation from slip and falls. And what I've been told is once you activate a snowmelt system, you can't turn it off. You're sort of beholden, right, to keep that going and provide that same level of service. Because that was my first question. Can we just turn that off? No, we won't turn it off. We have fleet emissions too. Those are kind of holding steady, but making some progress on electric buses and EVs as well. So when I first started, I wanted to do the most impact in Vail. So I said, where are all these emissions coming from? Snowmelt, 80%, 79%, whatever. People focus on the fire pits. They're kind of an irritating, visible source of waste. But people don't think about usually, hey, why is this sidewalk clear on a February day? There must be an army of elves, that come out in the middle of the night and shovel it. No, we run 130 degree water through our streets. And this image actually was probably the most impactful thing that we could have done when we showed that to some folks in our town government, our public works director. It kind of hit home that maybe we don't need to maybe our sidewalks don't need to be 100 plus degrees. So we found a lot of opportunity to reduce the output, the emissions, the energy, just through efficiency. Matt Garlick and his team really helped us with that. Last year, the town saved $120,000 that we would have ordinarily spent just through efficiency. So you have to have your efficiency vegetables before you can do your renewable energy dessert, I like to say. This is one of our villages, and originally there were meant to be a lot of zones, but the reality is those zones didn't operate as intended, so it's actually just one big system. That being said, there are ways to tackle it, which we have been working on. And we did experiment with an electric resistance boiler, 440 kilowatts. Then this is a little heat map here. Each one of those rectangles represents 1 hour of electric consumption. So all that green, that boiler is off. And that is a nice thing about electric boilers. They can kind of turn off and on without that ramp up or ramp down that boilers have. That's part of the challenge with boilers. The facilities teams kind of like to keep them running because there is an issue with ramping up and down sometimes. So electric boilers, very controllable, but initially 3 times the cost to do and this is one of our smallest zones, by the way. That has changed though. The economics are changing. Our natural gas prices doubled last year, so it doesn't seem like it's so far off. But that being said, we know electric resistance, that's like your tea kettle. It doesn't have a great efficiency compared to some other systems. So that has led us down the road of trying to figure out what is the best system to take hours away from natural gas. You know, we don't have to get rid of those gas boilers tomorrow. We can take 80-90% of the operating hours, because at the Town of Vail, the facilities team, they want to be ready for snow. We get these little squalls that come in, and they kind of keep things hot. And so it's not peaking, though. It's not running at full capacity. So for reliability, to make everyone feel comfortable, you know, we think we can move towards a thermal energy network, keep the gas boilers as peakers, maybe eventually those become electric resistance, and do our snow melting. And by doing a survey, an opportunity analysis of different entities, organizations, buildings, processes in the Town of Vail, we realized we could multi-solve. This was a term that was used last year at last year's Mountain Towns that I really liked. How can we solve other problems? We all have a shared goal around climate, but at a practical sense, there's things like the wastewater treatment plant. There are the building performance standards that are coming down on hotels saying, hey, you have to lower your on-site emissions. So after kind of surveying and figuring out who might be involved, we worked with Carrie and her team to do a workshop to really scorecard this stuff. And Carrie, you're gonna take us through that scorecard. Here's some of the categories. We literally put Post-its up and talked about, is it technically sound? You know, is it constructible? What are the financial considerations? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, so we had done a kind of a high-level technical analysis for the entire town. So we kind of knew where the nodes could go and couldn't go, and did some back of the napkin before we even came. And we went through that with the whole team. And we actually brought a representative from Avista, the utility, to meet with this group as well. Their logo isn't on the front, but they did come because they were our partner in Spokane. But we, at the end of all of that, and all of the discussion and the visioning, everyone in the room got to go through this scorecarding, and we got to decide, do we have the density? Do we have the growth potential? Are there high-end use buildings? Is it regulatory compliant? One of the groups talked about that maybe there were some political things or legal things we could not do. Does it meet your ESG goals or your common ESG goals? Is it constructible, right? One of the things we talked about was there's a lot of density in the streets here in Vail. So I think we had to be realistic about, is it possible? It's going to be hard, but it's possible. And the group talked about these issues while we were together. The resort was just very helpful in having some dialogue around that. We talked about operations, who would operate it. Every stakeholder talked about their interest or lack of interest in doing so. We talked about financial, what the pro forma would look like, what was important to everyone. So really we talked about all the elements, and we scorecarded it, and the group felt when we left that this was worth our time and effort, and there was a high probability that developing this would be successful. So as I mentioned, I've done these before where that scorecard didn't look like that. It's a very meaningful, it saves everyone a lot of time, energy, and money to just get together and decide, is this even something we should pursue? And in this case, I think it is absolutely going to be benchmark in the field. So it'll be another new adventure for McKinstry.
And just to update everyone where we've been since then, we've hit some great milestones with a schematic design and a subsurface utility investigation. And that really delineated in the Lion's Head Village where this thing could live. So we have a poster if anyone wants to check it out with the kind of high level concept. And we did make a strategic decision to focus on the Lion's Head Village, even though that's the big Town of Vail snowmelt plant is in the Vail Village, if you're familiar with it. We think Vail Village can connect in the future. We have a lot of horizontal space for drilling in the Vail Village, not as much in Lion's Head, but in Lion's Head we have the wastewater treatment plant. It's an incredible amount of energy we want to capture. So it's kind of our anchor for this system, plus the big hotel, the Arabelle, where we currently have a collaboration with Vail Resorts to do public snow melting out of that hotel. Plus, we have Town of Vail buildings like the library and the ice arena and the Lions Head Welcome Center and parking structure. And even though snow melting and emissions are our big why, the way the grants and things have been structured, you've got to involve buildings. And so we looked at that and we said, what buildings, can form the basis of a district that the town owns and that actually need improvements, like our library. It's end of life HVAC, right? It needs a cooling system. When it was built in 1982, same year I was born, so I really like the library. I feel kinship to it. Didn't have cooling, right? So now we can actually, instead of putting in a conventional cooling system, we can have a system that does both. And we can capture waste heat from the ice arena, which is currently being renovated. They're stubbing out for the waste heat there. And we've got the district basis to move forward. So we've had grant funding supporting the technical design from the Colorado Energy Office. The Vail Town Council has also supported this with town money. And we were just awarded the GETCO, the geothermal energy tax credit offering from the state, to move forward with phase one. Phase one is our library, our ice arena, and a bore field. And that really gets this thing going. And then we're going to keep working on this business case. We're really excited about the potential, but we also want to get started. We don't want to wait. So if everything goes according to plan, we will be drilling and digging up streets and connecting our two buildings next year.
You go to the next slide.
Yeah.
There
it is.
Yeah. So a lot of these nodes we had identified at the summit, but you've added some since because of all of our stakeholder dialogue. So, and I do think Ashley should talk a little bit about the in-building work. We mentioned earlier that in-building is a real key to this this project, and Vail's done a great job of identifying that as a key element here, and they did that first. And Ashley's group is actually the one that did it. So
So we're actually we're at the end of an investment grade audit. We've got a tentative thumbs up towards entering into an energy performance contract, and that would start to do a lot of that in-building work, a total retrofit of the library, for example. Ashley, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it's been really, a good starting point to start with the in-building work. So the energy performance contract will cover the ice arena and library. So it's this 3 and 6 node that Cameron mentioned. So we'll do the bore field. The library will be fully heated and cooled by that geothermal, and then we're going to trench across the street to the ice arena as part of that project and capture the waste heat from the ice arena in sort of a heat sharing first connection. And then our hope is that's the 2026 phase, and then to build this out as we get to the business model, figure out what the ownership and governance and funding for the rest of the district is, and then build it out from there. But I think it's been really successful to start with this first node. I think council's really supportive of that. We're able to do it through an energy performance contract, and then the rest of it, we have some flexibility on the ownership, operations, and governance of the system to really build out the rest of these nodes over hopefully the next couple of years. So,
Are we at time?
I think so.
I think we have
We're keeping you guys.
12 minutes
12.
for
Oh, we have more time.
questions.
Okay. Excellent.
So I think we'll open it up to questions.
Hi, everybody. Jake Leahy with Vail Resorts. Fortunate enough to be working with these lovely folks on this project, and can't speak highly enough of this group and the work they've done. Can you share a little bit with the group about how you're thinking about phasing for large-scale projects like this? Initially in the conversations, we said maybe we do it all at once, and now we're going to a phased approach. What's your thought process on that phased approach and how you do that?
So I think initially, because we already had the in-building work and we're able to fold in this first node, we went ahead and said, okay, we'll fold in this first node. But the intent of the development then is kind of do this proof of concept, get this first node going, and then do a bigger, more comprehensive next step, and simply because they already had that in the works. The best thing, of course, is to get as much scale as possible, because that brings in a lot more financial, aperture for investors who would like to participate. So the more scale we have right out of the chutes, the more options we have.
And I'll add, grants were a big piece of
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
We were lucky that the Get-Go grant was able to provide $1.8 million in funding for this first connection, and then a 30% federal tax credit, which hopefully still exists, but we wanted to capture those two pieces. So, 60% of this first node is being funded through grants and incentives, and we just don't know if that will, hopefully it will exist in the future, but the risk is definitely higher for waiting.
Hi, Kim Schleffer, Lotus Sustainability. You talked a lot about, or mentioned in the equation, policy alignment with local governments, and from the local government table or perspective, I'm curious, is that energy codes? Is it land use regs? Do we have a map for that, or is that a part of the discovery phase and process? If you could speak to that.
Part of the discovery phase. You hit all of those things. So we are right now mapping out. We map out ownership. We map out governance. We map out contracts as a baseline, including policy, and then we do what will happen in the project. So we have a baseline. We can show everyone where we started and then where we're going. But yes, we have to document all of that to make sure that we're assessing all the risk and assigning the right risk to the right contract, and that we're meeting all the codes, that we don't waste years of time and then decide we're going to check into it.
Yeah, I'd love to know how the energy codes evolve, and if there's any, amendments that must come out of an energy code or energy policy to best support this type of integration.
Yep. Here, and then we'll go there.
Yeah, Marty with the City of Durango. I'm just curious about a few technical aspects of the systems. So, one is the actual thing that's sharing the heat, is it just water, or is it like a glycol mix or something like that? And then also, is if the bore field is, as I understand it with geothermal, like you could eventually deplete the thermal resource if you're not putting it back in. And so if there's this like summer winter balancing that you have to do. And then I guess the third question is it mostly water source heat pumps that are tying into the system, or are there other things that are tying? So just some of this, like just picturing how it all works.
Yeah. Back here.
Maybe a quick question. You mentioned you have projects here in Colorado and in Washington State, two states that are pretty open to climate, at least saying the word. Are there other states where this is not as easy to do? And if so, like what is the enabling legislation that has to happen at the state level to allow these projects to happen?
There's 13 states that have some level of legislation, but yes, that is where you have to start, right? So what we've done in Seattle is we've very much participated in the government. We've gotten contract vehicles approved. We've gotten rate structures approved. You have to be very active with your local government. We use a lot of political consultants to help us kind of work that system to provide help to get these things across the finish line. But our whole goal was to work where that had already happened, at least to some degree, so that we could get some of these across the finish. Our whole thing is, how do we get these things across the finish line? So we wanted to start where we knew we could do that fairly quickly, and then we'll move into, we've been talking about this recently, we'll move into more political engagement, like we're now in Texas. So we've been talking about how are we going to facilitate that in those local markets we're working in.
I'll just add,
Thanks, Bryce. And I think we are at time. Yes. Cameron, Carrie, and I are happy to stick around if you have additional questions. But thanks you so
everyone.
much.
Great audience. Thanks for the participation.